rolling. Podcast number 5.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
what's
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go down the list with maybe 2 or 3 things that we might start with, and whatever you want to talk about. Let's go.
sure.
So um, here's idea number one: is small team engineering. How our strategies
Mm,
and having a small development and just team in general differ from the kinds of strategies that you run at a big organization. Because
that's a
there's a
good one.
very
I like that
yeah.
one. I like that one.
Um, and another one that we could talk about is, um, well, how do you get kids on the rails with deliberate practice? Like, how do you be the deliberate parent, setting incentives for kids to engage in deliberate practice? I mean, we've
Right.
previously talked about like how to like sit down with your kid and stuff like that. But how do you keep this going after you move like you have your kid working independently? How do you keep them aligned with you,
Right.
or what do you do if your kid just doesn't want to do it? Like, even with you sitting next to there, there's like, I don't want to do it. How do you incentivize them to
Right.
to play along with you?
Right.
um and Yeah, and then another thing that we could potentially talk about is things that we noticed about kids in the Eurisco program, that super advanced math and computer science program we ran in our original school program, where kids would kind of we noticed different types of programmers kind of emerging as the kids as the kid. You couldn't tell initially in the first year that they were in there, but like
Right.
eventually you notice like some differentiation. Like, okay, like Colby's a systems programmer. Like he's a quant. Like, it just there's
Mm,
these like archetypes of programmers, and ideally
right.
everyone's like halfway decent at everything. But you notice like people have different ways of thinking about things,
Yep.
and we've even
Yep.
seen this sort of thing in I guess recently when we've been talking to a bunch of social media people, the kinds of perspectives that they bring, their approach to social media posting. It's like some of them treat it almost like quantitative trading or something, and or it's like
Hmm.
you're like zoom in to the nitty gritty strategies, and others view of it as more of like a like step back. What's the big picture here? Um,
Yeah.
anyway, what's any of
I
that
like
sound
them
good?
all. I like them
All
all.
right, choose a favorite. We got to do one at a time. So,
Well, I like your table of contents. First of all, where are you getting this from? Did you just jot down these ideas through the week, or did you just sit down 10 minutes before? Where did these come from?
um, 2 of them I wrote down several weeks ago, um, and I can't remember what was the context. But the other one, well, so yesterday I wrote down the small team engineering strategies one, because
Hmm.
I mean, that's just something we've been talking about, how your hiring process is it's just very different. Like, when you got a big company, specifically the thing that made me think about it is we were talking about when you've got a big company, you can bring in a batch of interns and treat it almost like a VC portfolio, right? Where you're like,
Yep.
there's no way all 10 interns are going to grow up to be like superstars, like working at your company or whatever. But um, if
Yes,
you
that
if
was
you have a
that
large
was a
enough,
conversation we had a couple
yeah,
days ago, a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting, people is Justin does a great job of writing stuff down, where I like write almost nothing down. So it's like it's always depend on you to be like, okay, what do we talk about? Like what,
yeah,
what,
yeah, yeah,
and you're like, oh, I got it right here. I'm like, awesome. Okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, I should say, just for listeners, it's kind of interesting how I'm always like, okay, don't take notes when you're learning. Like, there's no point. Just work exercises. That's all you got to work on. But the thing is, like, the nuance here is that, like, when there is information that's passing through and it's not part of reference material, you can't go look it up after. It's just the spur of the moment. You're brainstorming something with someone, or a thought occurs to you, and you don't want to miss it. Like, write it down, because otherwise you don't have the reference material. So I just
yeah,
wanted to, before I
yeah,
get like pushback on like, Justin, you said like don't take notes, and now you take all the notes at math. No, there's a big difference between these two things.
yeah. It's like don't transcribe everything that's in the lesson, or like you're just transcribing stuff, right? That's a waste of time and effort. But right, this sort of ephemeral, we're brainstorming, or we should think about this, or we should do that. Yeah, that's totally different thing, because if it's gone, it's gone, and you might remember it, you might not, or you might only
Yeah.
remember some part of it. And one of the just funny thing about that is, for me, my brain, the way my brain works is when I start writing stuff down, I start losing some of the stuff I was thinking about. It's like a dream. When you wake up,
Yeah.
and like I'm in a perpetual dream state. Or a
Yeah.
perpetual state where I'm like, I just woke up with a dream, and you're like trying to remember it, but you start thinking too hard about any of it. The rest of it disappears, and you have to kind of be in this state where you're sort of you're in the dream, you're not thinking too hard, your mind is kind of going over it a little bit lightly,
Hmm.
and then but that's helping solidify it. And that's kind of how I am with ideas. I get these ideas or things, and I'm like, oh, and but as soon as I start thinking hard about one, which then leads to like things related to it, or aspects of it, and then the brain power attention gets focused on that, and then that stuff just kind of like, it's almost like you're holding onto so many balloons, and the balloons just kind of float around. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
ah,
Yeah, well, it sounds like a kind of a consequence of like the limited working memory capacity, right? It's like you can either hold like,
what are you
I
trying to
mean,
say?
you're limited to
Please
like
say I don't
four
have any.
chunks, right? You can either hold like four high level like broad picture chunks, or if you're gonna like zoom in on one, you're okay. Even though you're zooming into a lower level of scale, these are still separate chunks that you're holding when you zoom
Yeah,
in,
you're
because
right.
it's more information. And so yeah,
I thought you're
that's
saying
kind
I
of funny though,
I
because
thought you're
we
saying I
just
have no working memory. I'm like, what are you saying?
no,
Which
no, no.
may be
We're
true.
just, how we talk about it's like you're kind of the navigator, and I'm the like you're like, okay, I think there's good stuff over in that direction, because you're taking a
Let's
very
go
high
there.
level view, and then I will just like zoom in into it. And it's like sometimes you need multiple brains, or if you're going to do it with one brain, you kind of have to play. You can't play both roles at the same time. You have to
It's hard.
alternate back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to the whole deep work thing, like manager schedule, maker schedule, with Paul Graham wrote a great essay about, which is that the maker, meaning the creative, the writer, the coder, the artist, somebody has to just get in the zone and think really, really hard about something, where it could take hours sometimes to really get into the zone. Whereas the manager is like the email and the phone call and the meeting, and let me look this up and check this, and just lots and lots of little tasks. Little tasks meaning that they take anywhere from 30 seconds to, an hour or something. I got to review this document. I got to coordinate with this person. I mean, and both of these things are important, right? In life, in business, you don't get to just like, I'm just going to build stuff, and then I'm not going to do these other things, because you get nothing, and you can't, if you spend all your time just sitting in meetings and coordinating and stuff, like nothing serious gets done. So it's like you got to have both, and it's really hard. And that's one thing that Paul Graham sort of uh, really emphasized in his essay, which, by the way, you should read if you haven't read it, is that it's very hard to. I think if I recall, it's hard to do that and be the same person who does those things. But if you do, you sometimes have to segment. And Sandy would always be like, well, "Why don't you just do this in the mornings, then do that?" And then sometimes it's really hard once you get into a certain mode for the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bad at that. Like once I'm like in the deep work, I just resist. Like I resent being pulled out of it. And I don't want to do the meeting. I don't want to do the paperwork. I don't want to return these emails. And even other people I like, it's interesting stuff. It's like, I'm like, damn it, I'm in the zone, And then when I'm like, hey, I'm knocking all this stuff, I respond to all these people, the stress is relief, because I had all this sort of guilt about not getting this done, and now it's done. And then it's like, I can't get myself to focus. I have like this ADHD now, and I can't lock in on something. And it's sort of like, for me, it's almost like a day thing. Once you get in a certain mode for a day, it can be really hard to switch. Now, sometimes maybe it's like, well, you go to lunch and you have this like break in the day and maybe you can reset. And some people are probably better at this than other. I struggle with it. Um, but I think it's kind of, it's kind of similar. So that's what it makes me think about is that once
Yeah.
you, whatever mode your mind is in, you kind of need to go with that. And that's why, like sometimes when you're working with somebody, if you're a deep work person, you're the person who's responsible for getting this some big thing done, which and this big thing can be something that spans on the order of not just days but weeks or months. It's a big creative problem solving effort. And then the person who's doing all this all the manager type stuff, they got to leave that person alone. Just don't interrupt them, you know. And because sometimes Sandy would be like, well, you know, you got to do this, we got to do that. And I'm just like, do you really want to pull me out of this? I mean, because
Hmm.
when I get into this thing, I can get like, it feels like months of work done in like a week. I mean, I'll stop, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think you want me to stop, you know, because then like if you would say to us, well, why isn't this done? I'm like, pull me
Yeah.
out. You pull me off
There's
the
a
field,
cost.
coach. I was on the field.
Yeah.
I was I was making first downs. I was moving the ball. You pulled me out of the game. I don't, you know. And then like, well, can you finish up now? I'm like, you know, I can't just get in. It's going to take me days to get spun back up.
Yeah,
And
because you're like, where are we? What
what,
plays were we running? But where's the ball? Yeah, you got to spin up on all that. By the time you
but
do, it's like, okay, it's time to. We got another meeting for you. So
yeah,
how do you? So how? Okay, I guess a question that I imagine probably a lot of people listening right now are going to have is like, how do you survive this? Like how? Like what is your like? How are you not just like I don't know, how's your brain not exploded? Or if it has, how do you put it back together every time? Like this just sounds this sounds like psychological torture in a way. So
well,
what
I I think I can be pretty good at compartmentalizing, and what I mean is living in a state of denial about things that have to get done, and you know that fire is burning,
yeah.
and
You
you're
just
just like, I'm just gonna pretend it's not burning. I
so you
want,
just
you know,
kick
you're almost
yourself for a while, like, oh, we don't have any meeting, like we don't have any what do you mean my inbox? Like I don't see
meetings. What
it, dude.
meetings? You know, and you're kind of
Yeah.
thinking, you're wondering to yourself, like, I wonder how long I can let this burn. There's a part of you, this little part of you is like, I wonder how long I can let this burn. You know, and
Yeah.
I mean, this is it's not great, right? I mean, so I mean, part of it I think is I'm lucky in that I have Sandy, my wife and co-founder, because she is very operational. You know, there are people who are just operational people. They just get shit done. They're like, all right, make a list, research, collect the data, execute, good enough, done, bang, bang, bang. So, you know, that's why, like, in marriage, it's really important you find someone who's like a complement. So, like, you make up for each other's weaknesses and shortcomings
Yeah.
as opposed to you're both like the same person. You have the same strength. This that tends to not work, right? And so she's like, she treats me a little bit like the mad scientist. Like, okay, you go to lab, I'll take care. I'll run interference. I'll take care of this. I take care of everything else. But I will call you every once in a while, and you're going to have to do certain things. So she's learned.
Hmm.
She is aware that there's this trade off. Like, okay, if we can get Jason, we can get him doing stuff, then we can get a lot of great results. You
Yeah.
know, but so we want to let happen, but then he does need to pull out and do because he's the founder. He's like there are things that he's got to do a lot of things that isn't just write code or design UI or whatever. And so that, and so that has been incredibly beneficial to me. That she's so good at that and that we're such a good complement. And I think that's what makes really good relationships of any kind and marriage in particular, business partnerships is that you have this complementary skill sets and you appreciate what the other person can do. You're like, thank God you're doing this.
Hmm.
Right. thank God. Or and then you respect it and then you appreciate it and that you just like, I got this, you got that. Right. And that's how our marriage works with most things. We're very like, it's not like, well, it's your turn to do this. It's your turn. It's like, no, no, this is my sphere. This is your sphere. There's a little bit in between who's picking up, which kid and doing, there's obviously a certain amount of things, but it's a very, very
Yeah.
much a division of labor, which is very, very efficient.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
It's
know,
like you split the load, but you don't have to split every single responsibility or activity because that is just inefficient to have like each person doing half of it. It's like, okay, just whoever's better at it, just go do the thing and then split it out.
yeah. Well, I remember, so like friends of mine, when they were first having kids who were like maybe a little younger than us, and our kids they're having babies when our kids are like 6 and 7 or 8. So they're kind of a little further behind in the process. And they would have their first kid. And I remember my buddy Todd, and I was like, hey, it was like a Saturday, you want to go grab some Indian food for lunch? He's like, we're gonna go shopping. We're going grocery store. I'm like, you're both going grocery store? He's like, yeah. I'm like, why you why doesn't Mona just go by herself and we can go lunch? He's like, I don't know, man. I'm like, oh, okay. And at the time I'm like, hey, you wanna whatever? And he's like, well, we're gonna give the baby a bath. I'm like, you're both giving the baby a bath? It's like, I get it when
Mhm.
you have your first kid and you're just really excited and you want to do everything together. But I'm like, I'm telling you, like, that doesn't scale once you have multiple kids. You're
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm taking this one to practice. I'm taking it to the part. I'm going to help with homework. You do that. It's just a constant, but
Because you made your
young,
memories
young.
probably with the first kid, right? You're kind of at the stage like, okay, I have memories. We need to just like survive the situation. Like, just let's go.
We had three
Yeah.
kids, so it's like
Yeah.
you go from man to man defense to zone. Like when you're one, you're playing basketball analogy, you're double teaming, like two on you, right? Then you get two kids and it's man to man defense. Okay, you're watching them, they're in the bath, this one's this, and then you're just switching off, right? Eventually, you get them to bed, and you're like, whew, thank God we can watch a show or eat some dinner. You get three, and then it's zone defense. It's like, okay, I got these two, take these two to the park. You're taking her to this, haircut, doctor's appointment, whatever, right? And so you kind of learn to not be so precious about every moment. You're like, all right, well, I mean, you can't be everywhere once with multiple kids. Like you get plenty of everything, right? So you're like, I don't, and that's just the kind of the kid analogy. But division of labor is something that creates great efficiency, especially when you have people who don't enjoy the things that are more your responsibility or don't feel they're as good at it and enjoy more of the things that they do and vice versa. It's like, I don't want to do your job, man. Right.
Mhm.
And the person is like, good, because I don't want to do yours. Like, great. We respect it. We need it. Now, I have benefited greatly from my relationship with you and Alex because you guys have strengths that are in areas that I do not. Like, we're joking, like you write all this stuff down. You're really good. You're very structured, organized. I mean, it's 10 out of 10, and so like I can rely on you to do a lot of this organizing. And I'm like, okay, so what do we talk about? Okay, I remember we hit the, you're like, yeah, I got a thing right now. I'm like, awesome, great, and you'll just like take care of that. And Alex and his whole sphere of, how he organizes and has this entire 3-ring circus with the curriculum team and
Yeah.
all these different people and roles and editors and course designers and lesson writers and question editor and reviewers and this is that and this is in this stage. It's like a giant factory
Spread
with
all
every
across the world. Everyone
all across the
communicating
world,
asynchronously. Yeah.
multiple courses, at different levels. Things are being fixed or improved, added on, just to be created from scratch, and he's got to stay on top of all this stuff. I'm like, that sounds like a nightmare for me. But
Honestly, for me too. I'm so glad he does that. I don't have to. Yeah.
the one thing that's rare in him is that he has a variety of skills or attributes. One, of course, he's a mathematician, and so he's obviously extremely mathematical, but he's also a great pedagogue. Like, he really understands how to explain stuff. But he's also very good at hiring and managing people, which is
Rare
rare
for a
across the.
mathematician, right?
That's rare for anybody. Most people are
Yeah.
not great at that. And it's not just something you just, well, I just read a book on how to, it's like, it's there's sort of a natural ability, but there's also, you also learn some things, but there's a sort of natural ability, natural charisma or something. And in the ability to manage and organize a large moving machine, which he's constructed. So he has all these skills or attributes that are rare, and that is in one person. And if you say, well, most people say, well, look, I mean, we have to have some senior mathematician who's also a pedagogue. That's rare because most mathematicians aren't necessarily great pedagogues. They like to think they are because they get out and give a lecture, but it's like, can you really break this stuff down so like a non-elite person can like actually learn this stuff? Um, but but then you have this, you'd think, well, I need this project manager. I need someone who runs this stuff and who's a project manager and sets up who's doing what and when stuff's being delivered and that he does all that. Um, and and again, like, and we could, all the stuff that you do. So I rely a lot on you guys making up for my weaknesses or the things that I don't really want to do or I neglect. You know what I
Yeah, just
mean? You
let the
guys,
fires burn. Yeah.
it's like, well, I think Justin will take care of that. No. It's like, and I think that's one thing as you get older, you just kind of learn like, I, you just kind of accept your weaknesses.
Hmm.
It's like you learn like there are a number of things that I'm good at, and I take pride in being good at these things. Other things, I'm not good at. I don't want to be good at, and I'm just not. I need somebody else to take care of it. And if you're, and for me, I have to say I got lucky with all three of you, right? I got lucky. My wife, that was kind of luck. She's like, how she phrase it? She says something. She's like, um, something like, I'm the best decision ever made for you. It's just, and because she's all business, so we were
Yeah.
dating. That's a whole other story. But and you and Alex, I mean, we've talked about kind of, and that's a whole nother story which we could go into. But it's like I got lucky with you guys. I can't say that because I was sort of like, you know, wasn't like, well, I tried out 20, I interviewed 30 people and went this whole process and I came up with this whole criteria to find this like, you know, I got really lucky with you guys. So there's a certain amount
Yeah.
of there's a big luck factor. Look, the last thing I'll say, and I want to hear your thoughts, but like any successful endeavor requires a great team of people. And it's just and getting the right group of people who not only are individually highly capable and but that you all kind of like each other, work together, and trust each other, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is a luck. Sometimes it just comes together, and you're like, damn, like we just hit it. You know what I mean? Like you're one of those people who like their roommates from freshman year in college are their best friends for life. You're like, that is just luck, right? Like you just happen to be
Hmm.
like this amazing two guys, and like for the rest of like okay, sometimes that happens. I mean, sometimes the girl you date when you're in eighth or ninth grade and you marry, she's like the most amazing girl. It's like that is just luck, man.
Yeah.
Just sometimes. And I think for me, I got really really lucky um, with you guys. I mean, how do you? I mean, I describe
Well,
you and
I
Alex
think
as
we
like,
all feel the same way. It's mutual feeling lucky.
yeah,
I think a question that probably what everyone's wondering right now is how do you know, like, okay, like in hindsight you can look at this and be like, wow, I got lucky, but how do you get into those lucky situations? Like, okay, Alex or I or Sandy crosses your path, like, do you realize it's a lucky event right there? And you like start gravitating sort of like, wow, I like this person, they really compliment me well? Or is that because sometimes these kind of these attributes you don't really realize it until later on? right? I mean, like when you first met Alex, for instance, like he wasn't he didn't start like managing our content team right from the very beginning, right? This was something that kind of you didn't realize that like he had this capacity probably when you first met him. Then he kind of grew into it quickly and like, wow, this turned out great. So I guess I and probably everyone who's interested in this story would like to know, how do you actually, like, it's one thing to look back in hindsight and be like, wow, that was lucky, but the second part is, well, how do you do it? How do you notice the luck, or how do you pull it out of people, or how do you get yourself into this lucky situation? What's the closest thing to a formula for it, or
Ah,
just heuristics?
okay. So I'm is funny and this might seem kind of ironic because I'm sort of like kind of quantitative and analytical, but on the one hand, but I'm very intuitive. Like I'm very, how do things feel?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like intuition. Really, this just really sounds kind of like, dude, like what do you, what is that? But you know, when things just feel good and feel right, like this is working. Like I like this. You know, like then you kind of double and triple down. So you always have to. It's kind of like you check your gut. You know, it's like, because if things aren't working, you're not going to feel great. And sometimes they're like small things, just the way someone's talking to you, or the way you're communicating, or the way you're just like, I don't know, this just feels a little off. I just don't feel, I'm not super excited about talking to this person or seeing them again or whatever. But sometimes you're just like, I love talking to this person, right? So like, let's just talk about Alex. So when he started, I was just looking for someone to write some tutorials. So at that time, this was very early on, I had, you know, we didn't have a whole lesson concept. It was just like a topic. I had some tutorial and some questions with it, right? And at the time, I had sort of a handful of like grad students who were writing some questions for me. Not a lot, 5, 10 hours a week, most in the US. And I had someone who was younger, 20s. She was real bright, Caltech, all like physics, all this kind of stuff. But she had, her attention was being pulled in three directions. She was one of these people who was just good at a lot of stuff, and so she had like infinite opportunities. Like I'm gonna work at SpaceX. I'm gonna work at Banning Company. I'm gonna go to med school. I'm gonna. Everybody's like, great, you know what I mean? Because she's just, and she just had all these doors open, and so she had a hard time just staying focused because she's like, I want to, you know, work on math. I want to do this. I'm like, great. And then it didn't feel like I could get her.
It's like an extracurricular in college. Like, this job is my extracurricular.
Yeah. And because it was only part time too, but you know, it's like when everyone's door is open to you, everybody's like, you're amazing. Then it's hard to commit to one thing. You're like, you know, but you have that natural charisma that, you know, I'm like, oh, so yeah, and I could see it. It's funny because like, oh, so you could be this person, director of creative, you know, like kind of this proto idea I had, and she kind of fit the look and the feel. I'm like, oh, you know, but I said she just had a lot of other stuff that was grabbing her attention, and I was struggling to get things done from these other contributors, these, you know, and if she's not focused and keeping them on the rails and getting stuff done, the stuff's not happening. And I was just like, oh, you know, it's frustrating. And because I'm trying to teach these classes, I was teaching all these classes and during the day, so I don't have as much time to like
Yeah.
manage people. And
Yeah, because
so
you
it's
need
kind of in
somebody to
that.
stay on top. Because like it's not just somebody to like give directions for the week or for the day. Like, okay, everybody do this, and I'll see you all tomorrow. It's like you need to be constantly. It's almost like how we've talked about, like, even in teaching, when you get like the new batch of sixth graders, right? They're like puppies going everywhere. Everyone's excited to do this stuff, but they like they're always, their excitement is leading them to go off in
Whoa,
all
whoa,
these
whoa,
different
get not.
directions. And it's like there's the compounding of misalignment, and you got to be just constantly like keeping people focused on the thing they're supposed to be doing. And
I mean,
if you don't do that, then things compound into suddenly like somebody is 1 degree off course, 2 degrees off course, and you didn't correct them. And they just kept doing that for the few days, and then you look up and you're like, wait, where are you? Like, you're all the way over there. Like, why are you all the way over there? It's like, well, you let them go that far without pulling them back in.
Well, it's like a coach. Like, why does a soccer coach at a professional soccer team, what does he really got to say to his, well, he's got a lot to say. I mean, these guys are pros. They've been playing together many times for years. They know what they're doing, but you also need someone saying, look, we need to close down space here. We need to put more pressure here. We need to look for this, whatever. You have these things, and you got to get people kind of working together. Or coxswain, like in a rowing, and it's like, how hard is it to keep these guys all pulling together, right? When they're doing crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have this coxswain who's just this smaller person who's in the front. It's like,
Yeah.
pull, whatever. It's like, do they really need that? I guess, yeah. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't have that person,
Yeah.
right? Because it's extra weight. And you're talking about like elite athletes who do this how much variance is there doing that? There's almost zero variance, but yet it can get off. Or conductor in orchestra.
That's right.
I don't really know what they're doing, but apparently they're keeping everybody, moving together and doing their part. And so everything syncs up and creates this effect. And so we see that. That's just how this seems to be required in human nature when you have multiple people working together, and where some type of synchronization is critical. Now I think when you're working with people who are all working part-time and remote, it's even harder than if they all show up to an office and they kind of sort of can self-coordinate when they're kind of doing this 10 hours a week, and they're taking grad classes, they're working on a dissertation, and they're like, it's so easy for them to be like, well, what are we doing? Like, do this, come on. Okay, so that was a situation. And I initially was like, I need someone to write tutorials, because these people were all focusing on just writing questions. And I searched and found a few people on Upwork who were PhDs in math and had done some kind of educational stuff. And I hired him, and he was just like pay by the hour, write some tutorials and kind of stuff like that. And he did a really good job. It wasn't like, there was a lot of like me explaining to him how this was supposed to work. It wasn't like he immediately knew what to do. And a lot of things that he was thinking were not correct, because it was like he was thinking from more traditional, well, this is how we teach. Like, no, this is math. Well, we do this as small steps, and that whole thing. Short paragraphs, short sentences, as little text as possible. Break it up with examples, break it up with images, no more than a half a screen to a screen max. The younger it is, the shorter it needs to be. Fall immediately to a concrete example, immediately when they start practicing. So like that was all kind of a new concept to him. But he was very open to instruction, to coaching, right? He was coachable. He's like, oh, okay, all right. And then, it took, and he, there was a process of, because I had been thinking through and doing this for a while. So I had kind of figured out what worked, and I had a strong idea about it. And he was easy to work with, and was like, okay, and was open to feedback, and was coachable. And, but so he was doing this like a lot, and 30 or hours a week or something like that. Right. So he was like every
Yeah.
day. And I was like, maybe he should really run the content team, because this other person, she was doing 10 hours a week, and I would see her for 3 or 4 days, and then she'd come in and do some hours on a Thursday night, and where he's like every day, I'm like, maybe it would be better if he did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I allowed her to do some other things that were more appropriate based on her attention and time commitment. And so he kind of took over that. And then I remember saying, and then after a while, he started doing a pretty good, when I say over a while, I mean like a period of like a week or two. And I was like, oh, okay, well, and he would say, well, this person, she's not really getting back to me. And I don't know if this guy really is able to write these questions. This might be above the level that they're, of their true mastery. And so I said, okay, look, you you consider this your team. You don't have to keep anybody, and it's up to you. Because I had learned, I had for the listeners, you obviously know the story, but I had created a men's soccer team, which we would sort of call a semi-professional soccer team back in 2001. And I had played college soccer and I really wanted to play at a high level, and I couldn't find a men's team that was anywhere near the level that I was enjoying. And so I was like, I want to create a team that could almost play at a professional level with amateur players, guys who maybe had played pro or almost played pro and played high level college, that kind of stuff. So anyway, whole nother story. But my one guy who was I made him the team captain. He was an older guy, or older than the other younger. He wasn't like 25. He was in his early 30s and played at a very high level, and a really smart guy. And I think he was senior, like a management role at work. So he was like a real adult, right? And a leader. And I made him captain and I said, like, you're captain. The defense is yours, because he would play center defense, right? He's a sweeper, and so he's in kind of the quarterback of the defense. And there was one guy on the team who I liked, a good guy. He was a good player, and a good athlete and all that. But he would kind of just freelance. Like he thought he was Deion Sanders. So if anyone knows Deion Sanders, if he's too young for that, like he was this defensive back in the NFL they call him a shutdown corner. You could not throw the ball to that corner of the field because he was so fast. He would make a play on it, and intercept it. So he was scary to throw to that side of the field. Don't throw to Deion. Damn it, he'll run it back for a touchdown. So one of the greatest athletes to ever play football. And he kind of like fancied himself a Deion Sanders.
Yeah, so this guy thought he was so good that you can just give him the ball, or just he doesn't have to coordinate with people. He can, once things get in his zone, then he can just
I got it. And so Richard, who was the captain defense, he'd be like, Alan, you get on your guy. You got to mark him up tighter. Like he wanted to lock these guys down, these wing attackers, lock them down. Because if he's like, and he'd be like, yeah, I got it. So he was fast enough that he could just kind of cheat. Like, I'm going to go up and cheat and maybe see if I can make a play on the ball and defense, whatever. Meanwhile, the guy supposed to be marking is kind of like, I think I'm kind of open here, and then he gets the ball through, and then Richard's like, damn it, and he has to leave his guy to go defend the guy who's now attacking, and now his guy's and it's a mess. This would create problems for the defense. Richard complained to me, and he's like, look, you gotta tell him he's gotta stay on his man. He's like, when he doesn't stay on his man, then I can't stay on my man, because I gotta kind of watch his man and my man, and then we're not locking down the defenders, and I can't, and he said to me, it was really an important lesson for me. He said, look, Jason, you told me the defense is my responsibility. And I cannot have the responsibility without the power to say who is or is not on my team and on my defense. Because he was like, we can't use this guy. I've talked to him again and again. He won't do what I'm asking him to do. He's like, if you want a clean sheet, you want to shut down defense, you got to let me choose my team. And I was like, that is a really good lesson. You can't give somebody responsibility for something without giving them control. Right? That's not fair. And it's not reasonable. And so I was like, all right, fine. And so we had to cut him, which was not a great experience. I liked the guy personally. I know he was unhappy with that and thought it was unfair, but there had been many, many discussions with him about changing his approach to defense, and he just wouldn't really do it for more than a few minutes. And so we had to cut him. And that's again, being a leader, you have to make hard decisions like that. You got to hurt people's feelings. It's like, do you want a team? As my goal is, I want to make the best non-professional team in the country. That was my goal. He's like, you want that, or you just want to go have fun with your friends on the weekend? It's not that great of a team. It's not that serious. No one's taking that seriously because you're not taking that seriously. It is what it is, as they say. But I had committed. I was like, we're going to make the best, men's team in the country, and we pretty close to realize that. I mean, we got to a point where we had an exhibition match against a major league soccer team, down at their stadium. We, we had some real high moments. We were right at the very top, and so, but that meant making hard decisions. But anyway, the point was that I had to give Richie B, as we called him, control of his defense, and then we had a much much better defense than that because he's like, either play like I want you to play, or you're not on my defense. And you get
Yeah.
people in line, kind of rowing together with the strategy. This is how we're playing defense. Okay, we're moving up. We're shutting down space. Okay, now we're cutting down. We're doing this. This is our strategy, right? And so I with Alex, I had already learned that lesson. I said, all right, it's your team. I said, you can keep anybody on the team who you already have, who you think is getting with the program as you see it, who's going to write content the way you want it written, and who's going to coordinate well and be responsive and follow feedback and all these kinds of things. And if you can't work with them, then you can get rid of them and fire somebody else, because I can't. Otherwise, if I don't give you that control, then I have to kind of be in there making all the decisions, and you're just kind of like, I don't know what your role is. You're not really in control of the content, the curriculum development. You're just sort of an advisor who writes stuff, and I didn't have time for that. So I gave him control.
Because you want somebody who you can hold responsible for the output of the team, right? And the only way to have that person is to give them control over the team that they build. There's no way to otherwise. That's the only way.
That's right. And I'd be like, I would give him the resources that he needed. You say, if you need somebody else, if you need people, you can hire who you want. Because he would I remember early days, he's like, about hiring people. I'm like, whoever you want. It's your team. Because I'm just, I would say this because I'm holding you accountable. So pick who you want, and and then I would of course be like, okay, well, we need to get this done, or we need this, and so sometimes I would be like, well, we need more people, or if we're going to get this done in this amount of time, or I need another tutorial writer, I need another editor or something. And so there was all these kind of discussions about what the resource needed, but I would typically say, look, I'll give you what you need as long as it's reasonable. And, I'm not going to overpay for stuff just because it's easy. Hey, pay everybody as much money as you want, and I'm like, okay, well, that's easy. Pay everybody $1 million a year. It's like, okay, you can get the best people in the world, but it's just,
it's like you put reasonable bounds on the space of decisions that can be made, but like just within that arena, it's like, okay, Alex, you make the decisions.
It's your team, and as long as you feel like it's reasonable, you're like, okay, I can work with that. Then okay, then I can hold Alex accountable. And say, okay, is this the quality of this course going to be where what I expect, and is this going to be done within a time frame that is reasonable, that kind of stuff. So, the real role I played, by the way, in that was just sort of just playing kind of a meta role and helping him just increase efficiency. I was like, so what work are you doing? Like, tell me your day. Tell me your week. What are you doing? Because he'd be like, well, I do this. I'm like, do you really need to do that? Because I felt like he was doing a lot more meta work than was necessary, that you might see like in a corporate environment where you're really kind of cover your ass to show that you're doing stuff. Like, well, I'm writing these briefs and I'm doing this stuff. And I was like, God, I feel like there's just a lot of brief writing. Like, just write a Slackman, just do this. Like, why do you spend half a day writing a freaking document? Just tell them what you want. If they have questions, couple back and forth, go. Otherwise, you're like crafting and formatting and this and yeah. And I was like,
the meta work is not the work.
It's not
no meta work.
And it doesn't impress me. I don't give a shit. In fact, I'm annoyed. Like when I see lots of meta work, I'm like annoyed. And he was initially kind of like, I remember talking to his wife. He's like, "Yeah, Jason doesn't. He's like, no meta work." And he's like, "Okay, so let me think about this." Like, no, And I didn't want to say like you can't write any things down or you can't create, a document or a spreadsheet. But it's like just as much work as can be, effort as and time as possible can be focused on doing the thing and not talking about the doing of the thing. And the meta work is just because that could just overwhelm the process. And so I think you see it in a lot of companies, they just, the focus becomes that because of politics and bureaucracy. And it's like nobody's doing, and there's like one guy who's actually doing anything. Everybody else is just talking about who's doing what and the plan and when this is going to do. And I told them our meetings and approval. And all right, you know what? Everybody's fired. That guy, here, do this. You know what I mean? And so I've always been allergic to bureaucracy and bullshit and meta work. And I can only talk about something for so long before we actually have to do it. I mean, when you and I talk about something, like, all right, I can't talk about it. Like, just do it. We can do it. I can't.
Yep. Yeah. Well, another one of the reasons I think that we kind of have to bias in this way is because you can always come up with like a million possibilities of what might happen when the thing that you're working on, when you introduce it, when you release it, when customers start using it, when it just makes contact with reality. And you can predict which way the ball's going to bounce. You can try to do that. And like 90% of the time, you're going to be wrong. Like, unless there's just like really, really obvious, like you look at a UI and you're like, I'm confused by it. And then you go and fix it. But if you're thinking about like second order, third order, like optimizations on this thing, you're gonna waste time doing the wrong things. And if you're doing a meta work on like this whole plan for like what's going to happen next after we release it, whether the next like bits and features and whatever, it's like, what, there's no point. You're wrong. All this is a waste because you're focusing on the wrong things because you don't know what the right things are because you didn't do the work to figure out what it is. It's like even figuring out what you should be talking about next depends on you doing the thing now to get that information from the world.
100%. It's like when, let's see how I'd phrase this. It's got about like three things to say. We were talking about earlier about how I have like too many things to say, and if I start thinking
Yeah.
about one, then I lose the other ones. Okay, so this has happened. Well, okay. So one thing I would say is, like when they talk about like startups would go and try and raise venture capital, and they have these pitch decks, and they'd be like, in our growth chart, and we're going to do this, and it was just everybody knows this bullshit. The venture capitalist no bullshit. It's bullshit. They kind of have to go through it that's
Yeah,
just
they're
part of the.
projecting revenue like a couple of years out
Yeah, we're gonna
from
make a
zero. We
billion
have zero
dollars.
right now. We're gonna think of this many customers. Like, really? You can
Everybody's like,
predict
great,
it?
okay, sounds great. A little bit of that is okay. It's like this is a big enough market, and then the profit margin and the cost of the okay, yeah, okay, I give there's big opportunity here. That's all you need to say, but it's nonsense because there's just so much between that has to be done that's just going to dictate what's going to happen. You can't make these predictions and with any level of accuracy. I remember one thing I used to say to you and Alex all the time. We'd have sometimes conversations, and you guys would be like, "Well, what about if and with this?" I said, "Let's just solve today's problems today." You cannot solve tomorrow's problems today because you don't even know, or like next week's or next month's problems today, because you don't really understand what those problems are, and you don't even know if they're real. Because we can imagine all kind of well, what if they wanted to, what we can play what if forever. It's just a total. It's mostly a waste of time. It's okay to do a little bit of that. It's okay to do like, well, they think. I mean, I'm going to say you can't think at all about what the future might look like when may happen, but you got to be careful not to get caught going down that rabbit hole and spending too much time thinking that you can make all these predictions because you're probably going to be wrong, or at least you're going to be wrong about the relative importance. Like, okay, these 10 or 12 things I might want to do, yeah, but like there's the one thing that like everyone's going to do. It's important now, and you're getting distracted by this other bullshit. And would have been helpful if we just built that and got it out for people. And then not only that would have been done, everybody's happy and using it, and they're telling other people. But now it shed more light on this other thing or two that kind of relate or depend on it. So like just you kind of like, okay, here are all these things that were interesting or could be important. Okay, let's figure out what's the order of what's really the most important one, and let's just kind of do that, and then we'll pick our head up and go, okay, based on what we've learned from doing that, now we can talk about the next thing. Because it's, I think for smart people, they love spending time trying to predict this stuff and thinking through this stuff, and they kind of pride themselves on predicting, well, see, we avoided that catastrophe, did that. Everybody wants to, we all want to avoid problems and catastrophe. And well, why? There's going to be a scaling problem. There's going to be a race condition. Like you want to try and get ahead of some of these things, but you just got to be careful about overestimating your ability to really pinpoint what they are. Because what will happen is you'll over-engineer things that are just not. You're solving problems that are fake problems. They're not real problems. You over-engineered it. You came up with this vastly complex solution to a non-problem, to an imaginary problem.
And in the process, you've actually created 3 more problems that you don't see currently because you're anticipating the future. If you just waited till the problem actually happened and then you tried this as a patch to the problem, then you'd notice like, oh shit, like this is going to be more headache. But if you do that too far in advance, then you solve one future headache that you see, and then you introduce 3 more that you don't, and now you're net behind.
Yeah, because everything you do everything you add to a system makes a system more complicated, and it puts down constraints. We got a wall there. Now we got another wall. It's like, do you really want a wall there? You better be happy about that wall, because now you got a wall. Yeah. So, like, sometimes there's some really important walls, you need to put them up, but you just make sure that they're the walls you want, because now you got to work around that wall. Now it's a load-bearing wall.
Yeah, so it's like you want to, okay, so to kind of summarize a little bit, you do need to think hard about the stuff that you're doing, but you don't want to think hard about how do I make it more complex? You want to think hard about how do I make it simple so that I'm not putting a straitjacket on myself. That's kind of the thing that you're
going to have to carry this thing around with you. This is the complexity. It's almost like, like I don't like owning a lot of stuff, because now you got to lug that stuff around with you. Mm-hmm. Now that stuff owns you, right? So it's like the code owns you.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a buddy of mine in my first startup, he used to say, like, you better be careful what code you write, because you're gonna own it for the rest of you're gonna be supporting it for the rest of your life. That's a little bit of exaggeration, but the point is well taken. It's like, you may be you're going to be supporting it. That is going to be a thing that you have to deal with. So don't add anything into the suitcase that you don't want to lug around for the entire vacation. Like, we're going to Europe. Don't bring a lot of stuff, man, because we're going to a lot of countries. Like, it's just only what you need. And that's kind of what you think. It's like, so, and if you're solving problems that aren't real problems, now you have all this extra code that you got to lug around. They have to put in constraints on these other solutions. Like, oh, it'd be really cool if we build this. It's like, oh, geez, but there's the thing, and it's going to impact this thing. And now it's harder to make it work quite the right way. We have this added stuff, and now it takes 5 times as long to build. And then, oh, by the way, you spent the time doing that as opposed to building the thing that everybody really cared about. Mm-hmm. So there's so many reasons to try to avoid getting caught up building stuff that doesn't really need to be built, and to focus on the really critical stuff that you know how to solve now. And it's also like the attention. If you get too focused, what about that? Like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Don't stop. I'm not gonna talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's stupid. I know it's fun to talk about. It's a waste of time. We need this. Let's focus on it now. And so sometimes you have to do that as when you're running a team of smart people, because smart people can invent an infinite number of problems for themselves. They can make a great job convincing you and themselves that this absolutely has to be done. And you just, and I think sometimes smart people struggle with setting limitations, constraints on their own hubris and their ability to just think through anything. And you just remember, it's like, you just have to remember the times that you did that and you screwed it up, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess sometimes that's the joke that, you always call it Jason time and the real time. It's like, that what that is that my inability to really imagine all the additional levels of complexity that are involved in this thing that has to get done, right? And I know this
Yeah.
about myself, and I'm still always underestimating how long it takes to do stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because, right, it's like on one hand, you don't really want to think too hard about these additional levels of complexity, right? Because you're like, you don't, because I mean, we just talked about this. You don't want to be thinking too far into the future, anticipating all these downstream things that you're gonna have to do because you're probably going to be wrong about a lot of them. So it's like, okay, on one hand, you want to kind of like just focus your field of vision on what you're doing right now. But then at the same time, when it comes to like actually like, okay, realistically, how much work is this? How much is it going to take? It's kind of like, at least the way I kind of think of it is like, you don't always know exactly what are the things that you're going to do after, like after what you see in front of you, but just historically there's always like some amount of like additional journey to make to push it. Like historically, maybe what you see in front of you is maybe the first 30%, 40%, 50% maybe. So like just put an extra 2x or 2.5x factor on there.
Like,
Even though
hey,
you don't
buy
know
that.
exactly what it's representing, it's going to be there in some way. You'll figure out what it is later, but it is there.
Yeah, I try never to give an ETA when something's going to be done because I always fall take longer. It's always frustrating, and then I'm always apologizing. I was like, I don't know. It feels like it should only take 3 days. That's what it feels like, Because Sandy's like, so let me guess, 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, I'll be done 2 weeks. She's like, right, 2 weeks.
Yeah. This
So
is it's like this is the reality of that one. There's this Twitter meme that kind of went around like a few months ago. That was like, you can learn anything in 2 weeks. You can do anything in 2 weeks. And I mean the joke is kind of like, you can't really, but you can if you think that you can, then you can get far enough in 2 weeks that you can actually like follow through and close the loop much later.
yeah, well, I think that's it's sort of an attribute of entrepreneurs is they have to be sort of self-deluding. It's the only way that you can get started on an actual project because if you knew the actual what was really going to take, you wouldn't do it. This is way too much. It's just, oh my god, You're like, oh, that's going to take me 2 months, 3 months max. Great, and then you get going, and then of course it takes 18 months. But you in for a dime, in for a dollar. You made enough progress. You're excited. Okay, whatever. You need delusional. You need delusional people sometimes at the helm just to get everybody. It's like with Steve Jobs is known for his reality distortion field. And I've been accused of that by a number of people. Is just you distort reality around you because you believe so strongly that something is possible, and it's not only possible; it's possible in a relatively short period of time, and then you get everybody moving in the right direction. Well, sometimes that's enough to that because that's required to if you're going to finish it, you're going to have to do that. And then a lot of times, once you start making enough progress and learning enough, you get enough momentum, and everybody's okay. Yeah, we got. I mean, this is going to take more work, but we're in it, right? So, you got to have that level of self delusion. Now, at least I'm fully aware that I'm delusional about things, which you'll occasionally sort of indirectly point out to me, and I just think it's hilarious because I'm like, yeah, it's about right. So, but yeah, do the things in front of you. Do prioritize. Pick your head up every once in a while. Look at all it. Look at the landscape. What needs to get done. Make a sketch out. Here's a preliminary sort of order of operations. Here's the most important one. Do that, and then pick your head up and go, okay, what do we want to? What are we going to do? Because I mean, how many times a week do I ask you to do something that wasn't on your to-do list?
Probably 7 days a week. Yeah,
And
I mean, these things just kind of come up, and the further we kind of get along, and in terms of building out more infrastructure, the more students we have, the more stuff pops up randomly. It's like just it's a stochastic process, right? And you just have more. You take more samples at like each time you like cast the fishing line. There's like a it's one of those cases where they're like, okay, 1% chance you're going to get a fish, and now you're casting. There's you got so much surface area on it that's like every day there's just like something that you just didn't expect to have to deal with, right? And
Well, it's because yeah, because there's just um, at sort of level zero is just tech support issues. Or Sandy will be like, she'll email you or email me. She's like, okay, this person, they're not getting tasks or this thing and some weird thing, and you're like, and I'm like, I don't know, that's a Justin problem. You're like, that's a
mm-hmm.
Jason problem, and they want to look into it, and it's like, okay, here's what happened. We have this edge case, or some things like that happen, or I get a request from someone. I'm like, okay, we gotta actually, this is a problem. We gotta deal with it, and so stop the presses, and we gotta do this thing. And so that stuff you just got to deal with. But then sometimes you can fix it, but then there's like, actually, this is a systemic problem, and this is the only person it's going to affect. We should just we need to fix this now. And that happens a lot with you, or you'll notice something at the model level. You're like, okay, this kind of uncovered something that is affecting more in this person. Do you want me to fix it? I'm like, yeah, you need to fix it. And sometimes it's half a day, sometimes it's 2 or 3 days. Depending, I mean, you're pretty fast. A lot of times it's only like a half a day to a day, but nevertheless, this kind of stuff happens for somewhat regularly, either because of a feature request that's really important or a bug or something that we just have to change to deal with it. You got to fix it. You got real customers paying you money and you're like, I can't do the diagnostic won't progress, or I didn't,
Yep.
it's like, you got to fix it. Right. I don't care what your plan was,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
so I think
things take priority. Yeah.
acknowledging the unpredictability of, like what you said, the stochastic process, and just don't hold on too tight.
Yeah.
This this to-do list was just it wasn't is written in sand, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing that was funny, we've talked about the last couple of days, is the analogy of like, I can't remember. I'm going to get this wrong. Someone could probably fact check this on like on using ChatGPT or something. But it was like, it was something like 50% of the people in the world have a what's known as a rare disease, and a rare disease is constitutes someone has less than 10,000 or 100,000 people are afflicted with. So it's like it's a rare disease, but a lot of people have rare diseases, and which is kind of a weird thing to think about. It's like, I got this sort of weird, like, what is it? Wow, it's get this. I can't hear it in my left ear when whatever it is. And if anybody's watched like these old shows like Mystery Diagnosis, you've seen these crazy shows. These people have these bizarre diseases that no one's ever heard about, and they're really hard to diagnose. But anyway, so a lot of us have these things. Some are minor, some are major. And I think like our system, when I was joking like the other day, because it's just our last month or two, there just seemed to be a lot of little things that pop up, and you're like, God, this weird thing that only affected this weird edge case. It didn't affect that many people, but there were a lot of these things that would pop up. That these because the model and the system is incredibly complex at this level.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the consequence of just doing an expert system. It's like, yeah, it gets complicated.
So, in effect, because the human body is incredibly complex, which makes it unsurprising that there's lots of different ways is that it can have little diseases, little problems, genetic problems, or whatever. And I think that's sort of similar with the system. You get complex and you have these rare diseases, and you're like, oh, I got another one. This is, I haven't really seen this before, but it's like and I think the observation you made is like, the more more customers we get, the more surface area of the system is exposed, where it's like you can hit these rare combinations of, well, they were in a course, but then they quit halfway through the diagnostic and changed to another course, and then they switched back to the original, and then they clean slate. You're like, wait, what did they do? Because people do these weird things,
Yeah.
and because we're not anticipating all these weird things that they would do, and just people do stuff, like, I don't know, they just click around, try this and do this, and then they tie themselves up in a knot. And they send Sandy to email to Sandy. Sandy's like, well, I don't know how this happened, but apparently this person, and you're looking at it, and you're like, okay, so they did this and they did this and did this. And because we split and we created a new course, because they quit the diagnostic halfway through and was in a course and it was 6 months ago, and then they reactivated it and we changed the course and added more topics and the diagnostic, it's just crazy, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, when you're coding it up, you try to control for all these edge cases, right? But when you're controlling for these edge cases, you've got like one or two actions in mind. It's like you're building your game tree kind of, and you
Mm-hmm.
build it up to like two ply or something. You're like, because you're trying to just like limit things, trying to code it up in a way that these like sequence of act like that long sequence of actions don't matter. That you can just
Right.
reasonably keep it scoped down in your head. And so you make this net, and you think the net has the mesh fine enough to catch everybody, but eventually, like once in a while, yeah, you get some weird sequence of actions in the action space that you thought was like, oh, that like I thought that was going to be covered by my mesh, but it turns out that there was actually like just a little opening in the armor. And I mean, the armor's still like it's good armor, but if there is any little opening and you're shooting like a billion arrows at it, like when's it going to get through? And and so yeah, just the more right, the more arrows you got going, the tighter your armor has to be in all these spots.
Well, it's like, think of the human body. It's like most people are walking around, and most people are pretty healthy who are not elderly and or who have not just totally abused themselves with drugs and horrible life. But assuming you take relatively good care of yourself and you're not elderly, it's amazing how many people walk around and are pretty healthy. And that's the same with the system. Vast majority of people are not having any real bugs. They're fine. They're just progressing through. But there's people who maybe don't abuse their body. They abuse the system, and they do things to the system that we did not anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like kind of what I was describing before. They did this and they quit that and they just flailing around. They flail.
It is kind of funny how different, like you expect people to use the system in a certain way. There's like there's this zone of expected behavior, and I mean a lot of people do use it that way, but just as you get more and more people using it, you see a lot more of this weird, like just never, like wasn't on your bingo card, would not have.
Yeah, yeah. I just this sort of flailing behavior,
Yeah,
and a lot of times it's that they're trying to get the system to do something that it doesn't really do,
yeah.
or was it meant to do, but they're trying to just wedge it in there. It's like, I want it to do this thing. And you're like,
So they're kind of spamming kind of different actions that they think might like kind of jig it in a way. Yeah.
like they're trying to use Microsoft or like a Google Docs to like as a Google spreadsheet. Like I create a table and it says it's not a spreadsheet, it's just a table, and they're like, use the
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Well, I like to, or using a spreadsheet like a database or something. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you kind of use it that way, but you wouldn't use it like a database unless it's like a really small list of people like that. Really, so people they just have a different use case in mind. So, for instance, I had a mom who's a really nice lady. She's been a real supporter of Math Academy and she and on like on X, and she's like, well, she sent me this email. And she's like, well, so we're going to use the gravity because she's one of our gravity beta testers, and she's like, where we're using Math Academy is sort of as an adjunct, as sort of a review and is sort of extra review, extra practice for a school. So I want to use the gravity to keep what he's doing in the system aligned with what's going on in class. And I was like, well, like we created gravity because we want to have people some ability to sort of prioritize certain things. Like, I need to learn this stuff sooner rather than later, right? And people say, I don't have any control over that. I want to build it. I really need to get to systems of equations, or I really need to get integration with trigonometric, substitution or something, whatever, because of the class, because there's something they need to learn. Okay, I get it. That you want to give people a little more control over, instead of just, you sign up this course, it's just going to give you whatever it wants you to do, because the idea is that you're going to complete the course. Now, you open up more control, more decision points for the user, and guess what? They're going to do different things, but it's never going to be enough, because there's always going to be people who want to do more or use it in a way you didn't intend. And so I had to tell tell her, I said, I get what you're trying to do. I understand. That's not really how the system was meant to be used. The system was meant to be a primary learning platform. I'm learning algebra or calculus or whatever it is, take a diagnostic, and then I commit so much time each day and I master the material in the course. It's not I'm in algebra course, but I'm doing this on the side and I come in once or twice a week. That's not how it's meant to be used. And I said, it's probably going to be a frustrating experience to try and get it to do something that it wasn't meant to do. It's like, you don't want to use a motorcycle like a car and then try and go to shopping at Home Depot and put a bunch of stuff. Like, it's your motorcycle, man. You're not going to the Home Depot to buy plywood for your build out of your kitchen. Like, get a truck. I guess that's a motorcycle.
Yeah, and then the next question is like, oh, can I just put a trailer on the motorcycle? Will that work?
Exactly. Like, and I get it. People want to try stuff, and they may not totally get what your intention was, and users are going to use it. Users are going to use, right? They're going to use your software in a way that solves their problem, right? They're solving their problem, and we're here to help them solve their problem. But anyway, the point is, every time you build new features to allow more control, understand that you're going to open up more potential problems because you've made the system more complex, because there's the surface area of things that are happening to the system has increased. And there are always going to be people disappointed because they want to do more than what you've even added. You're never going to make everybody happy. But of course, the more you add more control, the more people get confused. Like, well, I'm trying to do the gravity this, and then you get more email support, and people are like that, and you're just like, oh man, why are they even doing that? Like, I have people come into Gravity and they go, because typically the way Gravity work, for anybody who is listening, who hasn't aware. So you have this knowledge graph. Anybody's looked at the knowledge graph and you see this big sort of like a tree of topics and how they're connected prerequisite. And you say, well, I know all this stuff here. I want to get, if it's 5 topics away, it's a systems of linear equations. Like, I need to get to that, right? I don't know that. It's on some test or something or whatever. And you add Gravity to it, and then it will prioritize the path of the prerequisites. Like, there might be like 9 prerequisites that have to be completed to get to that topic, and it will prioritize them. Well, one person came in and they clicked every single one. Like, you already have Gravity on that. Like, you don't have to do Gravity. It was like a weird thing, but I was like, okay, I guess I don't think they quite understand what Gravity is supposed to do, but then we need to explain that. And then another person was like, it was like 100 topics away. It's like, really? I mean,
yeah, you chose the topic at one of the most advanced topics in the course that depends on like most other topics in the course. Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, everybody has their thing that they're trying to do, and it's always, or they, and I had to put a limit on someone put like Gravity on like 30 things. I knew that was going to happen. So I'm like, we're limiting it to like 5 or 7, because that's just, if you have Gravity on one thing, then it will prioritize that, and you could get to it relatively soon. If you have priority on 10 things, it's like, well, you're prioritizing 10 things.
You're prioritizing everything. Therefore,
you're
nothing
prioritizing
is prioritized. Yeah, too much Gravity means no gravity. They all like kind of cancel each other out.
If I suggest, Justin, what are your life goals? You're like, I got 100 life goals. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Okay, so you're usually going to do nothing.
Yeah.
Because you can't do everything. So you think, no, my goal is this. Have 1 or 2 priorities. Maybe 3. You get beyond a few priorities, and then they just water. You have to spread your time and effort among them all so much that that nothing's prioritized. So yeah. What was another one that was funny that I was looking at? I was like, oh God. I don't know, it's escaping me now. But the Gravity situation is just an example. It added complexity. I haven't had too many bugs with that. I mean, there was one where they go to a more advanced course, they add gravity to that course, and then they go back to a lower course, add gravity, and someone had reported this bug to me, and so it's like it's still including the gravity in the course they're not in. It says you have gravity on 7 topics. It's like I only have it on 5, and I'm like, okay. Somehow, when it was
Yeah.
doing a database query, it was saying, okay, it needs to limit it to the course they're in now. So that's not a big deal, but there's always things you just really think about and add complexity. And again, people do things they don't expect, and you just have to go, well, and it opens up problems. So, I mean, I think that's also like as products become more mature and you add more advanced features for your power users, and this is sort of a well-known problem and sort of the innovator's dilemma, and then it gets so complex that new people come in and they're like, I don't, it's like looking at Photoshop. You're like, I got to take like a semester long course to understand how to use this, even get started. I mean, there's tons of like software like this AutoCAD and 3D modeling and
Mhm.
rendering, and like you look at these rendering programs and graphic, they're all like that, and you're just like, oh my god,
Yeah, so it's a real challenge to introduce all these capabilities without increasing the cognitive load placed on the user. You want them to be able to do more stuff, but if all that stuff's in their face, then
Yeah, and
they're going
create
to be
for not only
overwhelmed.
probably made it's much easier to cause to even move forward out, because every feature you add, it's putting walls down, it's making stuff more complex. So we're going to do
Yeah.
more things. Like, well, because we got to do this, everything affects stuff. But the other problem is things become so complicated that new users come in and they're intimidated, they can't even get started, and it's not a beginner product. So now you open up a space for a competitor to come in and have a slimmed down version of what you do, and it's like, well, we do the really important 80%, it has 20% of the features, and it's like something like where video editing is like CapCut instead of you know uh, what is it, Adobe Premiere or something, or it's like people look at Adobe Premiere and they're just like, oh my god, like super powerful, but like I need to just cut this video in like 15 minutes. Well, yeah, it's probably not the thing. So they use simpler things. So it's all trade-offs. Yeah.